Good. All right, if everybody could take their seat, we're going to get started today. As you could see in the invitation, we have a very big agenda. We're going to cover a lot of territory today. We had over 500 people RSVP. Many of them are going to be online, and many will watch it later. But I'm happy that everybody's here and taking a seat. Let me just do a little introduction here to get us going. Nearly every state and city in the nation is facing a triple threat of high sale prices, high mortgage interest rates, and a lack of supply and affordable housing. Thankfully, interest in housing affordability and availability is at an all-time high, as represented people in the room today. We'll hear today from our own Mayor Andre Dickens, who has been our greatest champion in promoting and executing affordable housing. I want to welcome the mayor and thank you for being here today. But action on affordable housing doesn't stop at the city limits. And as you may remember, through the years, we started this conversation back in 1986. But about 10 years ago, we wisely broadened our scope to say that the only way we're going to figure this out is through a regional approach. So today we'll hear from Anna Roach, CEO and Executive Director of our agency, Planning Agency, Atlanta Regional Commission. And we welcome Anna back. She's been here before. And then we'll hear from a panel of regional leaders from DeKalb, Gwinnett, Marietta, Cobb County. Understand more of the work that's going on, and then Anna, I think, will speak about the broader work in the 11-county area. And then lastly, we have our own Elizabeth Apley to give us an update on what's happening at the legislature in the Gold Dome this year. So let's get started. Let's welcome our mayor, Andre Dickens. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's good to be here with y'all. Thank you, Bill, for that introduction, and thank you for continuing to lead this Atlanta Regional Housing Forum. Thank you to the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership for hosting this quarterly forum that we have here. It's good to see you, Anna, and all the other great leaders that are here in this audience and those that are online. As you know, affordable housing is my love language, as we say. I've been talking about affordable housing since 2013 when I was running for city council, and at that time, a lot of individuals weren't even talking about affordable housing. Atlanta was considered somewhat affordable. I was talking about it, and there was neighborhoods that were saying, we don't need no more affordable housing. We got all the Section 8 housing. We need those problems cleaned up, all that stuff. That was what they were saying. That was 2013 and 2014. Here we are, only a decade later, and everybody is like, we need more affordable housing. And there's been a realization that the cost of housing continues to go up, and people's incomes are not keeping up with that cost of housing that's going up. So I consider it a privilege to be before you today to address this group of dedicated housing stakeholders, advocates, developers, policymakers, community leaders, academics, concerned citizens, and a handful of media that's here and press. We are all here as problem solvers, I think so, addressing one of the region's most immediate challenges. This is not just Atlanta's problem to solve, or DeKalb counties, or Gwinnett counties, et cetera. This is not even just ARC's job to solve. The housing crisis requires collective action, something that requires a little bit of something from all of us. That's why I've said that Atlanta is a group project. It literally requires something from all of us. When I became mayor, I set an ambitious target of creating or preserving 20,000 units of affordable housing by 2030. To date, we have delivered or started construction on more than 11,000 units so far. Thank you. And this is just with 3 years and 2 months under our belt. To have 11,000 units already delivered, or with people living in them, or under construction. And while we don't want to lose any of our momentum, we are still facing some very, very real challenges. There are so many factors that we simply cannot control directly in the city. The rising construction costs. I don't own a lumber plant or a concrete plant. Those things are just gone up, the construction costs. Tariffs are going to make it higher for us to get washers and dryers and sinks and fixtures, et cetera, and refrigerators. The costs are just going up. Labor costs are going up. The cost for framing a house, the cost for all of the interior wiring, every single thing related to the construction, the labor costs have gone up. And then again, as I somewhat mentioned, supply chain disruptions, challenges with getting the materials in on time and getting it at the price that you had previously estimated this would be. These are factors that are simply not directly in our control, but we still have these lofty goals of building or preserving housing. But despite this, we have been very successful by being creative. We bought 2 Peach Street downtown, right over 5 Points MARTA station. We bought that from the state of Georgia, and we're making the largest office-to-residential conversion in the state. We're making the single largest investment in homelessness in Atlanta's history, with $60 million being devoted towards rapid rehousing and building developments downtown and throughout our city for those that are unsheltered. We launched our Rapid Housing Initiative to do just what the name says, to get more housing built. So we built the Melody. We built the Bonaventure by the Pond City Market. We took the Atlanta Motel, and now it is the Ralph David House. And pretty soon you'll see Waterworks, which is right there, beachfront property by the Waterworks plant in the city of Atlanta on near 17th and Howell Mill. Advancing more than 40 underutilized publicly owned properties to develop high-quality housing. That's right, we're taking 40 of the city's properties, and we've been building on those. We've raised more than $300 million, which is the most in Atlanta's history, for affordable housing, and that is in partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta and the City of Atlanta. We launched Welcome Home, where a dedicated team offers developers a more transparent and streamlined approach to getting housing projects started. And we've had those affordable housing weeks in the city that help you quickly get your permits done. We've partnered with the faith community to develop more affordable housing on underutilized church properties and mosques and synagogue properties. Partnerships and collaborations have been very essential for us. We have learned that housing issues do not really pay respect to city or county boundaries. The path forward will definitely require our collective attention and our collective action. And while I'm here at this regional forum, I've stated my goals of building 20,000 units of affordable housing by 2030. So the mayor of Atlanta, as I was running for mayor, I stated that this is the goal. I always state my goals, so I know how far I'm from it and where I got to get, how far I got to go to get to it. At 16, I said I wanted to be mayor of Atlanta, and I didn't think it'd be this late in my life that I get there. But at 16, I literally told everyone I knew that I would one day be mayor of Atlanta, and it happened in my 40s. But my point is, I've been looking forward to other regional leaders to state their goal. You're going to do 1,000 units of affordable housing. You're going to do 2,000 units, or you're going to do 5,000 units. I've been listening and waiting. Now, some people keep their number internally, because if they don't hit it, they don't want the embarrassment. I say 20,000. If I come up with 19,999, burn me at the stake. But I think the point of the matter is stated goals are important, so we all drive towards it. And so while I'm asking for our collective attention on this, I really do want to hear where our regional partners lie on their goals of building or preserving affordable housing, because I really like to help push you to be able to get there. That's an interest of mine, and maybe it might be an interest of yours to kind of hear where the region is going to come out. I know I'm going to land at 20,000 by 2030. I want to know where everybody else is going to be, and that's a charge. As most of you know, in Atlanta, in addition to being Atlanta's mayor, I'm also the chairman of the Atlanta Regional Commission. In this role, I have gotten to see firsthand some of the highly innovative work taking place at the ARC and in local governments across the region. ARC's CEO, Anna Roach, is here today, and she will share an overview with us very shortly. We also have an all-star panel of local leaders who can speak to the great work that's taking place in their communities. As I said earlier, the scope of the housing crisis will take all of us collectively seeking creative solutions. We are making progress, but we are nowhere near winning this challenge. And so, as I've stated the numbers, it's easy to also think about the numbers because you can count them. But this lack of affordable housing is about real people. This is about real families. They may be our neighbors. They may be our colleagues. They may be our church members. They may be the people teaching our children or the people that are servicing the city of Atlanta or anywhere else. These are real people. And as my goal is to make Atlanta the best place in the country to raise a child, this is about our children as well. And so in my heart, I know that affordable housing is a problem that is solvable. Our essential workers should be able to live in the communities that they serve. Our senior citizens should not be priced out of their neighborhoods that they've called home for decades, that now everybody else get to enjoy. They should be able to live there and enjoy them. And our working families shouldn't have to decide between paying rent or buying groceries. The City of Atlanta is deeply committed to doing our part to bring this crisis to an end. We are building a city of opportunity for all, and where everyone can feel safe and everyone can have stable and affordable housing for them to call home. Thank you all. Look forward to our discussion today.
Okay, what we just heard is you've got to have a vision, you've got to set a goal, you've got to have a number that you're working, and you've got to measure your outcome. I hear there's an election coming up.
Don't run
Remember who our housing champion has been. He's meeting that goal. He's been a champion not only in Atlanta, but in the region and even nationally. Please thank our mayor, Andre Dickens. Thank you. All right. I'm highly scripted today, guys, to get through this agenda. Thank the mayor for being here. Now we're going to turn to the regional agency planning group, the Atlanta Regional Commission. Now their mission is to create thriving communities through data-driven planning and investments in the 11-county core of the region. Their work touches transportation, community development, aging services, workforce development, water resources, and especially housing. Representing ARC, we have Anna Roach. Let me just say, she's been recognized as 100 most influential Georgians by Georgia Trend. She's a member of Downtown Rotary. She's a member of the American Bar Association, and she's the former chief operating officer, and where we work so well together, in Fulton County. She's the first female CEO of ARC in its 75-year history. Please welcome Anna Roach. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Oh, my goodness, Bill. Thank you so much for that incredible introduction. So he is very muted this morning. I don't know what that's about, but I actually came for the Bill Bowling energy that we are all so used to. I think he's trying to behave because he's in charge of sort of being our MC. But if you know his energy and the energy that he has for this important topic, it is incredibly infectious. And you can't be around him for more than 2 seconds without a little bit of that energy rubbing off on you. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm hoping to catch a little bit of that energy, but also just to take in all that you all do in this important space right here. Also, before I dive into my remarks, I just want to honor our chairman, Andre Dickens, of the Atlanta Regional Commission. I will tell you that the same vision and focus that he brings to leading Atlanta, the same vision and focus that he brings to housing affordability is replicated in his leadership at the regional level as well. I could not be more delighted to work with him side by side to take this region to the next level. So thank you for your leadership, Mr. Mayor and Chairman. Really glad to be here today. Also, looking at this crowd, this is an incredible turnout. Thank you so much for being here. Housing affordability has been a major concern of the region for a very, very long time. The mayor talks about wanting to see progress in this area in 2013 when he was running. ARC has been looking at this issue for a very long time. We understand how important it is, not just to the quality of life here, that we remain affordable, but it's also important to our competitiveness, right? You've got places like Austin, Texas, Houston, Texas, other regions all over the country that are after Metro Atlanta for quality of life and affordability, right? We've got the teams, we've got the organizations, we've got the developers in place here to be the best at this. So let's not let the rest of the country down. This is an inflection point for us in Metro Atlanta. We've done a lot of planning, right, Bill? We've done a lot of planning on affordable housing, and we've seen cities like the city of Atlanta take the lead on action, but we've got to get the rest of the region to take action as well. And that's why we are here today. It's not a secret why this forum is called the Regional Action on Affordable Housing Development. It is time for us to move beyond the planning and actually take some action. I want to share with you, just to incent you in that action that you are called upon to take today, some key data points, right? You probably know the broad trends as we talk about affordability year over year. Home prices, and that's both in the rental sphere as well as the ownership sphere, they've been rising sharply. Much faster than wages have been rising. I want you to look at wages in the bottom line. We have seen increases over the last decade, right? But that's only, I could have told me I wasn't moving. Okay, there we go. So rents have only been rising about 15% as we look at that trend line, right? Rents, which is the orange line on this chart, it's also rising, and you'll see that that is rising. Rents in Metro Atlanta at a rate of 30%. That's double the rate of wages. Even more concerning than rents, look at home ownership, which is the green line on this chart, right? Home ownership, the cost for home ownership has risen over the same time period, a whopping 80% in Metro Atlanta. You know, like many of you, I have kids. I've got two boys, one at Clark and one at Kennesaw State. And when they graduate, I would like for them not to return home to live, right? And so when I look at a chart like this, I get very, very concerned that I'm not going to be able to have my basement back, right? But all jokes aside, these are really, really concerning numbers. And I really like the approach that the mayor is taking, which is fundamentally, regardless of the long-term plan for addressing this, this is a fixable problem. We know where the trends are going. Let's put our heads, hands, and hearts together to make sure that we have a plan to address that. Now, there are two big factors that are driving our affordability challenge. Many of you know what those two factors are. But the fact is, and the first and most important one, is that we're simply not building enough to keep up with our growing population. Today, who was around in 1996? The Olympics? Yeah. Metro Atlanta has more than doubled in population since the 1996 Olympics. And I need all of you to help me tell your friends who are saying Atlanta is full. Atlanta's not full. We are still projected to attract 1.8 million people to this region by 2050. So we have a growing population. What's not keeping up with our growing population is our building permits, right? The yellow bars in this chart show the change in building permit activity since the year 2000. And you can see that we have yet to come close to recovering from the significant drop that we saw since the financial crisis. We are building far too little in Metro Atlanta to keep up with our growing population. Now, the second major driver is the erosion of affordable housing units in Metro Atlanta. In the past 5 years, we have lost more than 54,000 units that rent for less than $800. And if you're shocked by that, I'm also going to share with you that we have lost 178,000 units that rent between $800 and $1,500. The only thing that has grown, right, are rental units that are more than $1,500. We have seen those creep up to nearly 260,000. So we have 260,000 units that you can rent for more than $1,500, but the units available for between $800 and $1,500 or at $800, those have all declined. So we're not building enough. And the affordable units that we have, we're seeing the price of those increase and the affordability erode over the years. Now, ARC's amazing data team has put together some maps, this one in particular, which really dramatically visualizes what happens over, or what has happened over the past 7 years. The static map shows the situation in 2018. The light orange and the yellow areas, that shows median home prices of $200,000 or less in Metro Atlanta. And then, of course, the darker areas represent housing prices of $750,000 to $2.5 million. You can see where they're concentrated now. Let's take a look, and I hope this works. Ooh, did not work. There we go. One more? May not work. Twice? There we go. Supposed to. Do we have any tech people in here? I heard our mayor's an engineer. We should have him here. Yeah, but this is what it looks like in 2024. Much more blue. Much fewer areas where you see yellow and orange, right? The affordable areas that I described in that price point have virtually disappeared altogether from Metro Atlanta. That is a problem. That is a problem. So you've seen exactly what our challenges are in the region. I want to turn to talk a little bit about some good things that are happening in Metro Atlanta and that give us all hope for a changing future in housing affordability. You did hear our mayor talk a little bit about some of the stuff that Atlanta is doing, but there's action taking place all across the region, and I actually would join the mayor in challenging everybody to set specific targets so we all know where we're headed in this space of affordability, right? At the Atlanta Regional Commission, we have taken on this work in earnest, and we have worked with our partners to make sure that we are at the table having this conversation about what affordability looks like for this region. We cannot plan for this region without addressing the issue of affordability. And so one of the things that we have invested in so far is called the Metro Atlanta Housing Strategy. It basically is a toolkit for all of our stakeholders within the region to provide detailed data at the census level about communities and what their housing profile are. It is a powerful tool, and we encourage all of our stakeholders and our local governments to go there. I mean, this should be one of the first things that pops up on your computer when you go into work every morning if you are really serious about addressing affordable housing, right? Not because we want clicks on our website, but honestly, it's an incredible tool that folks in the rest of the country are contacting ARC to replicate. And so we are exporting the expertise that we have at ARC, right, to help other regions be better. This is a real take the horse to water moment, right? We can build these tools, we can provide the solutions and the strategies, but we have to rely on our local jurisdictions to actually access them and actually use them. And I want to stress also, this is not necessarily just a passive activity on the part of ARC. We are regularly engaging with our local governments to make sure that they understand the availability of the resources to them in the region and that they're actually accessing it. The other thing that we do at the Atlanta Regional Commission is convene a small group of local elected officials. We do it on an annual basis, and we get them together, and within that meeting, they are together over the course of 6 months, and within that meeting, we give them access to the toolkit, and then we teach them about the housing profile within their community, and then they get together as elected officials and make specific commitments to each other that they're going to go back to their local jurisdictions and implement. And I want to share with you some of the progress that we have seen from that local housing action committee that we convene and operate within the Atlanta Regional Commission. The most recent class had Mayor Ollie Clemens from Austell in there, and he decided through that process to create a commission to study accessory dwelling units within Austell. Peachtree Corners Mayor Mike Mason said that his city would explore the use of federal ARPA funds to purchase abandoned or blighted homes that would clear way for new housing with affordability units within it. And Mayor Clarkston, Beverly Burks, the mayor of Clarkston, has committed to enhancing the city's housing trust fund to develop and preserve more affordable housing units within that city. So we've seen, we're 3 years now, Sam, if you're here 3 years now, and with the Housing Action Committee, and this was the latest cohort, they were very aggressive, but the cohorts before that were also very aggressive in the actions that they took. I also want to highlight Mayor Patty Garrett of Decatur. She was a member of the first cohort, and she has led her city of Decatur to develop and implement the region's first missing middle housing ordinance. Did not exist anywhere in Metro Atlanta. Happened first through the work of ARC's convening in the city of Decatur. Gwinnett County Commission Chair Nicole Hendrickson, who was also a member of that first cohort, among her commitments was to conduct a housing study and hire staff within her jurisdiction to be dedicated to preserving affordable housing and creating additional units. That staffer, Matt Elder, is here today and will be on the panel, and he'll tell you more about the incredible work that's happening in Gwinnett. So the other thing I'd like to highlight is another critical activity that we're having to do at the Atlanta Regional Commission. The regional housing strategy has been in place for several years. It is time to update that. We have new market data, we have new information, we want to refresh the website and also make a push for local governments to access that information. So you will see an improved regional housing strategy launched by the Atlanta Regional Commission in the next coming months. So please look forward to that. And also, we need your input. So Sam Shimbaga's here. Don't let him leave without getting your card so that we can have your input in the development of that tool. Ooh, yeah, working. Here we go. So there are lots of good things happening all across the region in this space. I just want to mention actually a few more because we are making incredible progress. You heard the mayor talk earlier about the steps that the city of Atlanta is taking in this regard. But if you talk to the folks in DeKalb, Tiffany Wills will be here today, they're going to fill you in on the significant strides that they're making in DeKalb County. They're going to develop the first county-wide affordable housing plan. That's a huge step for DeKalb County, right? It's a new approach that's going to not just address their affordability issue, but it's also going to address their unhoused constituent community and needs as well. And on the region's north side, the city of Canton is set to develop its first housing trust fund and work on building little cottages as a part of their housing mix in Canton. And then on the south side, the city of South Fulton has worked with the Atlanta Regional Commission to finalize their first housing assessment, which is going to provide a good foundation for them to take action on these items in the future. So I hope you understand that, one, we've got an incredible challenge in the region around affordability. And if we don't figure out how to address it, our quality of life and our competitiveness as a region is going to be challenged. More significantly, we are not going to be prepared to welcome 1.8 million people by 2050, right? So we've got a problem, and we've got to fix it. The second thing I want you to take away from today is that you're not alone in this, right? You've got leadership like what we have in the mayor of the city of Atlanta. You've got leaders from all across the region that are investing, that are planning, and that are implementing things to address this. So you're not alone. And I think collectively we will be able to accomplish this vision we have at the Atlanta Regional Commission for Metro Atlanta, which is to be one great region. I welcome each of you to join us in that, and I appreciate all of the work that you are doing right now and that you will do to help us solve this problem for our region. Thank you for having me.
In my introduction of ARC and Anna's speech, she said, ARC, it is data-driven. We used to have a saying at the food bank, things that get counted get done. So the toolbox she mentioned is very important. And I hope everybody in the room will go there, get familiar with it. We're using it around the region. I want you to just say one more word about your local Housing Action Committee. Sam heads up. It's not once every 6 months. It's every day, right? We've got a toolbox. You got staff out there with Christian, Renata, and Sam's. How does that work, Anna?
Yeah, I think historically we have invited members of our board to be on the committee. We have invited elected leadership from outside of our board to serve on the committee, and then we basically bring them together to have conversations about their housing profile and then come up with solutions to add affordable housing into that mix. I think the program has gotten incredibly popular. We are moving more now to an application process for leaders to participate in that because of the growing popularity in that program. But the other thing that application process will have us do is to be better able to tailor the discussions, specifically to the needs that those leaders identify on the front end with the application. So we're very excited to see the program evolve in that way over the next several months and years, but we're really excited and think that it is there's nothing like accountability, right? The mayor's challenge was that everybody set a goal, just like the city of Atlanta, who's leading on this issue, has set a goal. And I think this is another accountability mechanism for the leaders in our region, is to get them in a room and get them to make commitments to each other and to the region. So I'm really excited about the progress we've made and the progress we will make.
Thank you. What a team. Our chairman, Mayor Andre Dickens, Anna Roach, the CEO of ARC, and the team that Sam's heading up. We're making a difference. Thank you. Thank you. Last question. Will you come back next year and give us an update?
I come back every year.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, let me see if I can find my place. Now, we could have had a 30-minute Q&A with the mayor and a 30-minute Q&A with Anna, but I thought it was very important to have regional representatives here to talk what's happening in their region. And I think we're very happy to have that. We'll continue with the regional conversation. I want our panel members to come up and take a seat. I'm not going to do long introductions because they're going to speak to their work, and I think you know these folks. But we've got the best of the best here to tell us what's happening around the region. So I want to welcome Matt Elder, Planning and Development Division Director for Gwinnett County Government. Welcome, Matt. I introduce Gary Kelly, formerly of South Face Institute. I'm saying great. It's right in front of me. Now currently the CEO of Lovett School, but as a leader, he said, we need to have a conversation in Cobb County. And I remember when Gray called and said, do you have a problem that we would have a local housing forum? Absolutely not. We need a housing forum in every county. And I think Gray's leading the way and showing a model. So he is heading up the Marietta Housing Forum. Welcome. And Tiffany Wills, Vice President of Redevelopment and Strategic Initiatives with DeKalb County's Redevelopment Authority, Decide DeKalb. That's where the action is. Thank you for being here, Tiffany. Now, Matt and Gray, welcome back. You've been here before. You know how much I interrupt you is while you're talking to keep things moving. Tiffany is currently doing a lot of the groundwork laid in DeKalb County. We want to welcome you here, Tiffany. So, Tiffany, let me start with you. There are currently a lot of groundwork being laid in DeKalb County as it relates to housing development. Tell us what's happening with Decide DeKalb.
Good morning, everyone. So I joined Decide DeKalb in September, and we hired a new redevelopment manager shortly thereafter in October, Diana Pitcher-Williams, and our team really focused on the last 6 months of looking at the internal tools that we were currently using, how efficient they were, how effective they were, and then really looking at revamping a lot of our programs. Our redevelopment team manages our tax allocation districts, brownfield revolving loan funds, down payment assistance, and then several strategic initiatives, which we are working on in 2025 in partnership with the county. So we are focusing on hopefully getting a housing opportunity bond program up and running, if not the end of this year, then 2026. We have released new TAD guidelines for all 5 of the TADs that Decide DeKalb manages. Those applications are open. We created 5 new financing tools to attract developers, business owners, but also to prevent displacement of existing residents and businesses in those tax allocation districts. So really getting creative with our financing tools, knowing what we have the ability to do, what we may not have done in the past, so that we can create new incentives for the county. So it's been exciting.
Thank you, Tiffany, and I'm going to come back to you in just a few minutes. Matt, many in our audience here or listening online may not realize what's happening the last few years in Gwinnett County. You have a lot to tell us. Tell us about your planning and development work.
Yeah, first off, thank you for bringing me back. It's great to be in front of everybody and to see such an amazing turnout here. It's been a while, 3 years in Gwinnett County. 3 years ago in 2022, we completed our comprehensive housing study, which actually led to the creation of the division that I lead, Housing and Community Development. Not only do we oversee the affordable housing strategy and implementation for the county, but we also see the day-to-day administration of our entitlement grants from HUD, our CDBG, our home and ESG, and are able to seamlessly blend those two efforts together to try and get the maximum impact we can for the county and our residents there. So over the last 3 years, we haven't just created a new division, we've also completely rewritten our Unified Development Ordinance to make housing easier to be developed on the ground. We've created new definitions and provided clarity for what cottages and duplexes and missing middle housing looks like and how it can be easily defined and put together. Created a brand new zoning district called residential infill that now allows for us to take care of some of those oddly shaped parcels or to do a better job of allowing for that missing middle housing to kind of be a part of the conversation. That district has no minimum density requirements or maximum density requirements, no minimum heated floor areas. We've moved a lot of the traditional barriers that developers and people talk about as ways of they have to increase this cost of housing and made it so that affordability is much easier and much more readily available. On top of that, we also did a brand new unified plan just last year, our 2045 unified plan, that took land use to a whole nother conversation. We've done away with character areas. Now, parcel by parcel in Gwinnett County and available on our GIS, you can see at any time, any place, what we're looking to try and do with an individual parcel in Gwinnett, whether it's to be redeveloped, to be construction, or something we're just looking to keep suburban and rural because we have a very large county of 437 square miles and a lot of people who are currently there, just over 1 million, but about 500,000 more projected to come over the next 20 years. So a lot of different area to cover, a lot of different places to kind of go. But I think what has been most exciting for me, at least in the last year, has been the creation of our Affordable Housing Development Fund. The county committed $21 million last year to affordable housing, a historic amount. They've never committed that amount before. And we were able to get over 1,000 units of affordable housing that will be created or have already been finished from that. That will include multifamily.
Say that again.
So it's not City of Atlanta numbers, but for what is essentially a $21 million investment, we will get more than 1,000 units of affordable housing created and preserved. And that housing will come as single-family ownership, multifamily rental, modular construction, and preservation of one of the oldest affordable housing communities in Gwinnett County. And that was an imperative part of what we were trying to do. Last year alone, the county was able to complete more than 600 affordable housing units, which is, again, a historic high for Gwinnett County, and we are truly just getting started. We have grand plans, just like our friends down in DeKalb, to increase our financing opportunities, to look at better ways of leveraging our policy and procedures to make development happen more frequently. And then most recently, I know Karen's in the room from Gwinnett Housing Corporation. Just last week at the State of the County address by our chairwoman, Nicole Love Hendrickson, we announced that the county had assisted in the financing of the very first acquisition and to be conversion of an extended stay hotel in Gwinnett. And all the credit to Layla and the Gwinnett Housing Corporation for their incredible partnership. They're our largest nonprofit developer. They are in the room today if you want to talk to them about the great work that they're doing. But that 73-unit development in the city of Peachtree Corners, because I know Anna mentioned the city mayor was just in the last local action team, was able to approve and rezone that property that was then acquired, and we used home ARPA funds to help that acquisition, along with other funding from our Affordable Housing Development Fund. That will be 73 units, 73 rooms converted to 73 units that will serve primarily seniors and also youth aging out of foster care who are most at risk of going into homelessness. So when I say we're just getting started, I mean we're literally just getting started.
Gray,
Yes.
let me say again, it's wonderful when a citizen says, we need to have a conversation in our city, in our county, and just take the initiative. So tell us about your housing forum.
Well, it's a case study. It copied and stole everything from this housing forum. Just a 20-year pilot or 30-year pilot, I guess. And it meets at a church, and it honors the food bank of that church. It's it's a First Presbyterian Church in Marietta. They have a pantry on church, and so everybody brings canned goods there and stuff like that. But I am just a guy, and I think this is kind of, representative of Cobb County's, move towards a YIMBYism, I think. I think Cobb County has a history of doing workforce housing. It's just been a while. The Bell Bomber plant got built in the 40s. Marietta was about 8,000 people then. It's ballooned to 20,000 in the course of about 3 years. So we had to produce a lot of housing back then really quickly. And you can still see that footprint, kind of in the town. So that house that I bought first and lived in first was developed during that time. And my next door neighbor, Mr. Stepp, he hadn't detached ADU that his mom lived in. And across the street was Mr. Brown, who had a tiny home, who built a tiny home himself. He rode his bike from the Bell Bomber plant, after work to go build his own home. And next door to him, there was actually an old sign manufacturing building that was converted to housing as well. None of that stuff is legal anymore. None of that stuff is legal in our county. So we're just trying to return to times when flexibility was there, when multiple people could build housing.
Where you could do illegal things,
Yeah,
right?
where you can do those things, and it's all working, and it's and so we're just trying to get back to it, and we're just listening to see how we get there.
And tell us about who shows up there. Is it a diverse group like we have today?
It is very similar to this group, as a matter of fact. We're not up to your numbers. We're not up to the elected officials yet. We don't have as many of those around. But we do have exactly this kind of a mix of folks. I think it's a lot of citizens. It's the city staff. It is housing authorities. It is the schools. It is the healthcare providers. The biggest, kind of employers of Cobb County and Marietta, because they see this as a crisis themselves. And they're concerned now because we've been calling this a crisis for too long, and now they're just concerned that we don't know how to fix it. And they are trying to kind of, I think, take some initiative themselves to try to see what they can do as larger employers to kind of support this, because they need it, because they can't get their work done without it.
So the federal government plays a critical role in ensuring fair housing access and resources for housing. Need I say that we are in uncertain times? There was just a feature on the NPR station this morning about how many people had been cut in fair housing. Matt, how does that impact your work? And Gary and Tiffany, just go down the line.
Yeah, so I don't think, being in a room full of friends, I'd be overstating it, would say it's a scary reality. Every day we feel like we're waking up to a new challenge. I remember the day the first round of cuts was kind of announced. I woke up, I think, at 3 or 4 text messages on my phone immediately. And that's become a day-to-day reality, I think, in too many places. What I'll say is that while us in Gwinnett, and I know across the region, we're actively tracking this executive order or the next memorandum comes out, a lot of that has been stop and start. And what I think about and remember back to is that we are just coming off of a federal, state, and local election where affordable housing, for the first time ever, was on the tip of every campaign from coast to coast. And I don't want to lose that momentum or that target audience approach to what we can do to make this change happen in our community. I don't want it to become that we had a moment, but rather what are we going to do with the moment we have? So yes, the federal government changes are going to come, no questions there at all. But at least in Gwinnett, and I know with a lot of our neighbors as well, talking to them consistently, it's very much that we're going to keep doing what we do on local level, one day at a time, one step at a time, because that's all we can do. We have amazing partners, we have amazing collaborations, and that's the thing that we can do. And maybe it's just time that the local government takes a little bit more of a forefront step, as opposed to relying back on the federal government so much. And we certainly are watching what the state's going to do as well. But I don't want us at this forum or in these conversations or any of you in the crowd to think about what's going to come next, when's the next shoe going to drop, but rather let's think about the moment we have and how can we carry that forward as we push forward to what's going to come tomorrow.
Thanks, Matt. And a great example is committing $21 million, right?
Certainly helps.
Money counts. Tiffany, tell us, as you're planning and knowing change is coming, tell us what you're doing at DeKalb.
So one of the great things about DeKalb right now is we have new leadership at the county. We have a newly elected Madam CEO Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, who has been very passionate and vocal about housing being a priority. As Anna mentioned before, the county has issued an RFP for a consultant to be brought on board to help draft and create a comprehensive housing plan. So there is definitely new momentum and new energy at the county, and we are happy to support those efforts. It also helps that Dorian DeBar, our president at Decide DeKalb, is encouraging our staff to be very creative and to think about what future potential conflicts or deficits we might see in the market, especially with new federal leadership. So coming up with new financing strategies to help replace the loss of potential funding, whether that's in voucher assistance, if that is going to be a lower state allocation for tax credits, how can we help and start creating new tools on the front end to help fill the gap that might come in the future? Before 2019, 4% tax credits were non-competitive, and then everyone in Georgia kind of had a freak-out moment when DCA announced that the tax credits for 4% were going to be competitive. So we want to be ahead of that if that is going to be the case, whether it's from current federal leadership, whether that's going to be a local challenge. We want to start creating those mechanisms and those tools now so that we can be at the forefront of trying to replace any loss of funding.
And let me just say, to have your chairman say this is a priority really empowers Decide DeKalb to, as you say, be creative, figure out how to work in a creative and innovative way. I'm very encouraged in DeKalb.
Yeah, I'd just join in to say that there is uncertainty. What I'm listening and hearing is that there is that uncertainty, which I think is an opportunity to create some innovation, hopefully. I mean, I think if we hopefully take this issue and the uncertainty that goes with it, that's even on top of it now, we're going to have to come up with some new solutions, or at least think about them now. And I think this is a good time to do that, for sure. And I think the community's wanting to do it. I mean, I don't think anybody's depending. The developers I talk to now don't even want to do LIHTC deals anymore. They are trying to avoid those things. So developers are looking for a different path. Citizens are obviously looking for a different path. And I think local governments are doing the same. And I think this is a good time to all work together to do it.
So there's great opportunities to collaborate, not only between the three of you here, we've got other folks representing other counties. Do you guys talk to each other? Who calls who?
Well, I've only been in my role for 6 months, but we have
Time for a phone call.
Yes, I mean, we have been very intentional in establishing and fostering relationships with our county stakeholders, whether that is the county itself, Board of Education, especially our largest landholders, so MARTA, Georgia Power, and also reaching out to other jurisdictions to see what is working for them, what are the lessons learned from those programs as they've started them. Invest Atlanta has been a great resource for us, and even with DCA and with Gwinnett County, I recently sat on a panel with Gwinnett County's housing specialist, and just having those conversations to share lessons learned and what they would like to do better so that as we're creating our new programs, we can anticipate and prepare for things that might slow us down ultimately.
Yeah, I think that, first, credit to the ARC for helping to facilitate a lot of the regional conversations and bringing a lot of the practitioners together to talk about what's happening across the region. But then, as Tiffany was kind of alluding to, it's moments like this where we get to collaborate, not just as panelists, but afterwards as well, and having those conversations. There's no secret sauce to what we're doing. Every community in the state of Georgia or in this metro can do this and be successful with affordable housing. It takes a lot of ingredients. Local leadership obviously is critical. Money helps a good bit too. But at the end of the day, it's about designing localized solutions that are proactive in the response to what's happening around us, but having the dedicated base of your practitioners, your government, and developers coming together to really generate around one solution, one commonality, or direction we want to go in. And I think that on a regional level, we are collaborating in a lot of different ways on individual programs or ideas or thoughts, but we could certainly all do better on that. I think the ARC's done a great job in terms of pushing us in there, but I know that, I have friends at DeKalb and Cobb and Atlanta that I talk to, with semi-frequency, but we don't come together like a group like this to kind of talk about as much as we probably should to try and really, catalyst those ideas forward what we have, just locally that could really be of use across the metro and even expanding out from the metro as well. So
we can expect that question next time I have you back. You're
Absolutely.
talking more with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just say that we're having to, for our forums, we're having to import some exterior examples, right? So from South Fulton, Athens Land Trust was here with our forum on Tuesday, and other examples. So we have to kind of reach outside of ourselves some. But that said, I think in the forum context, the people in the front of the room are not the important ones at these forums. It's all of you folks. I mean, in y'all's conversations, nothing happens better at a forum than people discovering something that's happened that they didn't know about, that they were interested in, they didn't know anybody to talk to about, and all that kind of stuff. So the audience in these things is the most important thing from a forum perspective, I think.
And particularly now, because we really do have to be creative. We have to think outside the box. We're going to have to get local folks, as you say, folks in this room, our political leaders, to take the lead on this. Now, let me just ask that big question. If you had a magic wand to change one policy in your county, what would it be?
You want me to start?
Well,
Yeah,
if you
you
have
can
an
go first.
answer.
I mean, obviously zoning, right? So housing type and housing affordability they're intertwined. You can't disconnect them in any way, shape, or form. And that example that I poorly gave at the beginning is, we used to be able to do this stuff a little bit better. And that is kind of our barrier to having housing choice like we want and like we need and to produce new housing and also to give people the housing that they want and can afford. And so zoning is at the top of the list, and I think that's where I'd begin and end.
Tiffany?
So for DeKalb County, and I feel comfortable saying this because I know that Madam CEO Lorraine Cochran-Johnson has made this a priority as she has started just this January, is streamlining our permitting process. And thank you. To make sure that we can support development, whether that's improving residential existing homes, if that is trying to do a office or a hotel to housing conversion, really streamlining that process to help expedite the overall development schedule, which ultimately will help developers save costs. So we're happy that that is one of her main initiatives.
Power to you. Matt?
Yeah, I think for Gwinnett, it's really about just continuing to find localized resources that we can contribute to affordable housing to continue commitment. 21 million can't be a one-year shot of an abstract outside of what is going to be normal year to year. So that's what we have to really focus on policy-wise is how do we identify and really bring forward a traditional local resource that's going to be available on an annual basis beyond just what we may get from HUD through home or something similar to that.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions, but as we begin to open it up, I need a show of hands, people in the room who work in local jurisdiction governments, towns, counties, cities, state, federal. Who works in that area in the room? All right, maybe the majority of us. So we're really in a conversation with each other. Now, a planning committee would have a panel of 8 people up here, and I would never get through the agenda. But I know there's a lot of things going on around the region. Let me ask, is Brittany Anderson here at Canton, from Canton? Brittany, I want to ask you to tell us some things that are going on there. Just take a few minutes, and then we'll open it up, and people may come back to you to ask questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning. I am Brittany Anderson. I'm the city planner for the city of Canton. Before I talk about some of the programs that we have, I just want to say thank you to ARC for inviting us down to share some of this information. So the city housing team was established in 2022 when we were accepted into the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing Program. With the assistance from this program and our amazing housing team, our goal is to improve our current housing stock while also focusing on opportunities to create new attainable housing. Some of our projects include a newly created down payment assistance program where the resident is provided up to $12,500 and the loan is forgiven after 5 years of residency, or 20% is forgiven for each year that the home is occupied by the resident. We also have pre-approved ADU plans available for use within the city, and they're permitted by right in single-family zoning districts. The plans are free, but there are reduced permit fees associated with those. We are currently having discussions with Cherokee County and other cities to form a land bank, which will have housing and economic development goals. If you have any questions, there are information on our website under our community development webpage. The housing team page is where you'll find that. If you have any specific questions, you can always contact me or see me after.
Thank you. We have Patty Hansen here from Brookhaven, another place that's doing great work. Get the mic up here.
Oh.
Thank you for being here, Patty.
I'm the B team. Actually, our community development team is out in Athens presenting today. In Brookhaven, but I'm finance, so I had a lot to do with this one. And I work in federal funding, so I think they just wanted to give me a day to not think about that and come here instead. But Brookhaven, in 2024, purchased 2 parcels of land that we had had our eyes on for a while on Buford Highway, which is right in the heart of our extremely low to low income community that really was the start of Brookhaven. Brookhaven has only been here since 2012, and in 2016, one of the first things council did was want to develop an affordable housing strategy because they could see we were just losing people, losing our culture. So it's taken some time. As of right now, we have about 262 new added affordable housing units online due to what came specifically the ordinance changes that came out of that, the recommendations from that committee. So this is, so when we finally got these 2 pieces of land, we were so excited, and partnered with DeKalb County, not Decide DeKalb. Anybody wants to talk to Decide DeKalb, we got an application in with them, so it would not be right for me to do it. But we partnered with our development authority, Brookhaven Development Authority, and the DeKalb Housing Authority partnered. We have those 2 pieces of land. We have got an application in. We have a Light C application in. They're not that bad, because it is going to allow us to make that 100% affordable, which is a huge lift. We're not the size of a county, but if we're not all doing it, it's not going to happen. The federal government's not doing it. I don't know what's going to come out of the state. So every single local government, no matter what the size is, just needs to take this on. And I have to say, ARC has been spectacular. They have been giving us data since the day we got there. They've really been wonderful, and that tool is fantastic. So we did some great creative financing that let us help that out if there's anyone here from local government. But what we did is a $7.5 million purchase. We are going to we're retaining the title to the land, but the housing authority is going to develop it. We took out a loan on that because right now it's office. It will become housing, but because it's fully occupied office, that helped a lot. It allowed us to do a 5-year, basically 5-year planning where we just pay interest on it and we are getting income for it. So as this builds out, we expect, is anyone here from DCA? Because you can all talk to them for us too, right there. I couldn't, again, it would not be appropriate for me. They're also our neighbors. But no matter how it goes, we expect this to be well under construction in 18 to 24 months and to be welcoming 100. The application's in for 120. It's pushing 140 now as we look at it. It's right on Buford Highway. The new arterial rapid transit that's coming onto Buford Highway will have a stop right in front of it. We are building, and again, Decide DeKalb, building a pedestrian bridge over I-85 that will go right from here over I-85 and land on the Emory campus, and the Emory campus across from Children's Healthcare, which are exploding, obviously, with new jobs that are 24/7 on every level. And if we can not just build these homes, but give people access to transit. We have a program in the city with CDBG funds for childcare. We partner very closely with the schools for career training. So we're not just building the homes, we're trying to build a future, I guess the way to say it. So, thank you.
So before you give up the mic,
I'm sorry.
I would ask you and Brittany both.
Who do I go to?
Well, Brittany, come up here so everybody can see you. You know what, I'm so interested in how we collaborate, how we talk to each other. You didn't mention that Brookhaven has inclusionary zoning.
Well, there are a lot of people here who have great things to say.
Right.
Brookhaven was the first in the state actually, to pass full inclusionary zoning citywide.
So that's huge.
That was,
But let me ask both of you, do you guys talk to each other? Do you talk to Tiffany? I mean,
I always call Gwinnett. I don't talk to
DCA,
Matt.
you've pointed out. How much collaboration and conversation goes on between the different counties and cities? If there's none, I'm going to
I know
say a
there's
few more
plenty.
words, but
I was
how
like,
much?
poor Brittany, I mean.
Brittany, turn around.
So Cherokee County does host a countywide housing forum. We do them quarterly. At our last one, we had Linda Aberray, she's the Community Development Director at Brookhaven, to come and talk about some of the projects that they're working on. Prior to that, they actually met with some of the staff of the cities and county. It was Linda as well as Patrice Ruffin, she's the Assistant City Manager. So that was the introduction to what they're doing to us. And so we also shared some of our information with that. But like I said, we have a quarterly housing forum, and so everybody in the surrounding cities and counties come in and we have conversations. Maybe we need to reach out to other counties and cities just to compare to what Canton is doing, but we also participate in the GIG program, as I mentioned. As a part of that, there are a lot of communities and cities that are involved statewide, and so that's an opportunity for us to hear what they're doing and take information back. We traveled to Gainesville to see what they have been doing with their downtown area as far as housing, to get examples from that. So we are expanding our territory outside of Canton and as far as collaboration, so we're off to a good start.
Very good start.
As far as collaboration, and Linda Aberray, obviously, who represents us at all of these, and our Assistant City Manager, Patrice Ruffin, had been the Director of Community Development. In addition to that, she's an attorney. So she's just a fantastic resource, not just for staff in Brookhaven, but for the surrounding area. Linda and Patrice are an amazing team, as well as all the staff there. How I collaborate on housing, I was the project manager on the Affordable Housing Task Force. So worked very closely with Patrice and Linda as far as what we could do, what people wanted, what we were looking forward to, and we worked late into the night. I think it started with collaborating with a huge number of community groups there. And then working with, and once we could really get a good feeling for our community, what the recommendations were, working with ARC. I presented here at one point during that. And we work with our partners. I never hesitate to pick up the phone and call Decatur, call the county. One thing I do is when we are doing a new thing, I'm like, oh, how's Gwinnett doing this? And and who's doing it there? Because I was in North Fulton, and you guys, it's just really well run. We don't always do it the same way, but and then our housing folks, as I said, that's an incredible community. I'm always so jealous because I see the meeting invitations. I'm like, oh, Linda, are you going to that?
So let me, this is unplanned, but Sam, you're heading up the team at ARC. We talk about a toolbox.
Where's Sam?
Renata and Kristen on your team. So just say a word about how that works, because you're referenced several times here.
Yeah, and I'll make a plug for some of the things that I think folks would benefit from knowing here. And we just did this.
Why don't you come up and turn around so everybody can see you?
Good morning. So a couple of things that if you're not familiar with, we do have to the question around collaboration, Bill. At the end of the day, ARC is not an implementation agency when it comes to housing, but one of the strengths that we do have is that we have a vast network of partners and experts in housing and other regional issues that we can bring together to our core audience, which we consider to be local governments. And so to that end, what we do is we understand that local governments have a lot to deal on a daily basis. You're just trying to get to help your constituents with all the regular things on a daily basis. So we bring together, through one of the ways is the Regional Housing Task Force. It is a quarterly convening of housing authorities, any municipal staff that is working in housing, to come together and not just, and when we started this a few years ago, the concept was, let's have a forum where folks can come to talk to each other about the challenges that they're facing, try to set the stage for that we're not in this alone, we all have issues, and it's elevating to a point where every urban, suburban jurisdiction is faced with this challenge, and it's transformed to now being a forum where there's a lot of brilliant ideas and implementation that's actually happening across the region, but local governments just not have the ability to be able to tap into all of those resources. So we utilize that forum to create cross-sector and cross-jurisdictional collaboration in the 11 County Metro on a regular basis for sharing these ideas. And what I do want to mention is this is not something ARC is doing. We have a vast network of housing partners. Some of them I see here, House ATL, ANDP, Enterprise, Georgia Conservancy, and other folks that are very much part of this that come out there, and they will share with the jurisdictions about ways in which they can help make progress on housing. So that's one thing I definitely do want to mention.
Thank you. Again, we did not wish for the uncertainty of the time that we're in, possible cuts in housing, but there's also the opportunity. The folks you've heard from are the folks on the ground who are working directly with their citizens and working with their political leaders. So this is the opportunity we have to collaborate more, to look at what each county's doing. It can be a very creative time. Now let me open it up for questions, and I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. Just give us your name, who you represent.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janet Hill, and
speak closely.
Janet Hill, and I'm here on behalf of citizens in various communities in the urban areas who are in the process of fighting for probably 3 decades now housing issues specific to deed fraud. We have seniors, women, veterans, the disabled that are being targeted and displaced from their homes by criminals who are stealing these homes. We are now operating with local law enforcement, also other county officials. We're also forming organizations across 30 states. People are committing federal crimes in these communities by taking these homes. So in addition to the issue that we're facing in terms of finding homes after the fact, we're working on solutions to have people to stay in their homes that are being displaced by criminals. There is a fraudulent deed transaction forums that have been held across the city of Atlanta. I wish I was here when the mayor was here earlier. They know about these crimes, and they're not doing anything about it. And that is our focus. So when you speak of solutions, our organization is called...
Okay, I want to get some others. The name of your organization again?
Atlanta United for Fair Housing.
Thank you. There wasn't a question in there, but this is a group that's working on the ground. Right beside her.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Jerome. I am on the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of South Fulton. I'm also on the Board of Directors for the Old National District for the City of South Fulton. 2 things. One question is, I always get excited about hearing about affordable housing coming, but then it's usually rentals. So how much of the focus is on rentals versus actual home ownership? Is it 50-50, or is it more rentals because that's just, what the market allows? The second thing is Ms. Anna Roach brought up some great statistics. One of them was about the major attrition happening with the affordable units. Expiration of, LIHTC and developer incentives and developers going away from LIHTC. So what exactly is the plan to keep the housing affordable that is in the pipeline? Are we talking about rental caps? How does that work?
Good, excellent question. Let me just ask panel.
I'll go first, and that's Cobb has that issue too, and it's actually even complicated a little bit by the our vacancy rates are lower than most of the region. We're like at 4.5% to 5% of residential vacancy. That's single family and multifamily versus most of the region, which hovers around 9%. So we don't have any blighted properties really. We do a good job of hiding our blight in Cobb, where we don't show it off, but we also don't have a lot of inventory to use for stuff like this. So you do have to, in Cobb, we're gonna have to come up with something else besides blighted properties and things like that. That said, those that we do have, those LIHTC and retiring affordable projects, those are the ones we need to keep because we don't know how we're gonna get them back quickly, for sure. So that is the preservation is a big priority.
Matt?
Yeah, I think to your first question, for our 21 million, the split was about 80-20 between renter and ownership. And that was based on the projects that were brought to us from developers. But I mean, looking at the data on the ground, 60% of all renters in Gwinnett County are cost burdened compared to just 30% of all homeowners. So there is a reason why we're focusing a little more heavily on renter. But there's also a part that we don't have a lot of control over, which is in the capital markets and lending institutions. We've kind of lost, not just locally in Gwinnett or region or even across the country, the starter home idea, the concept, everything's being built at 18 to 2,000 square feet minimum these days. And a lot of the developers that we talk to who are in the home building industry simply can't get financing to construct stuff at lower because the margins just aren't there, or the loans for the end owner aren't there either. And so, we rely heavily on our Habitat affiliate in Gwinnett, along with the Gwinnett Housing Corporation and A&DP, who is our CHODO, to really come in and provide that ownership, affordable housing opportunities every single year. We certainly, as we move forward, looking at more revenue and more opportunities, are going to make sure that ownership stays a focus. It's not just all going to be rental. And I, of course, would like to see it get closer to 50-50 if at all possible, while still acknowledging that the overwhelming demand of cost burden right now in Gwinnett is on the rental side. So we have to address that and get that closer to equilibrium with where the ownership is, and then begin to look at it collectively on a 50-50 split.
Thanks, Matt. Tiffany?
So at Decide to Cab, we don't have a set allocation for rental units versus homeownership. But what we have created through our tax allocation district funding is incentives for both to incentivize developers to create more homeownership units, to create more rental units. Our funding can be utilized either as a grant for homeownership properties or for a grant or a loan for rental properties to ultimately lower the cost to build the home, which will help them obtain financing to get the homes built, and then ultimately that lower price point for the buyer will make that home more affordable to purchase. We're also looking at expanding our down payment assistance program. Current program, you have to be an approved lender. There are certain loans that the DPA can't be utilized for. So we're expanding that program, and we're about to start fundraising so that our funds can be used with any lender anywhere in DeKalb County. Amanda Ryan and I, she's with the Atlanta Land Trust, we had a conversation earlier about us having a conversation of what are their down payment assistance requirements, and looking at Invest Atlanta's and City of Decatur's or the Housing Authority, so that as we're structuring our new program, we can maintain the flexibility we need so that our funds can be utilized for any purchase. So being flexible and creative and collaborative with the cities that are located in DeKalb, also unincorporated areas, and making sure what we're creating isn't too restrictive and makes it less accessible.
And, part of the answer here is every county and city is going to be different, depending on its citizens, depending on the political leadership. So we lean in where we can make the most progress, but are always looking across, right? And I think, Sam, you would say the same thing as you're working around the region. A lot of work to do here. I'm not going to get to all these. I got about 10 more minutes. Let's get one in the very back. And this is a short question. That's right. Okay.
Of course it is, Bill. Good morning, everyone. My name's Lance Robertson. I'm with Natson Hotel Group. I talked to Matt earlier. I want to applaud you guys. We own 140 hotels. We are here to have a conversation to convert hotels to attainable and affordable housing. So we're here to have that conversation. Thank you. We have about 40 hotels in Georgia. We have several, 10 in Gwinnett, 5 in Marietta, 8 in DeKalb. We're here to have these conversations for you. So thank you for having this bill. You threaded this needle perfectly today. Thank you.
That was a great question. Thank you. All right, I'm just going to get a couple more in. There's a couple hundred people online listening on Facebook or YouTube. Jackie Staten is one of those people. She asked, what are some of the ways that housing organizations and alliances are trying to make sure that financing stays stable outside the federal programs? It's a big question because most of the money is federal, coming through DCA and through our counties. But what are we doing? Tiffany?
So for our funding
More
programs...
than praying, we are...
The only way to combat higher costs and higher interest rates is with lower costs and lower interest rates. So we are creating all of our funding programs will have flexible low interest rates, and in many cases will be available as grants to eliminate that debt burden, or at least a portion of the debt burden for the developers. So we do everything that we can to lower their costs and ultimately lower their overall development schedule.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think giving a shout out to House ATL and their Funders Roundtable, they've been able to bring a collective together to really provide local underground financing beyond just the governmental side. And same for the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta in terms of their work. But even on the lender side, I know recently Chase Bank and Truist are two of the largest banks in our area that provide direct funding into the affordable housing space and have put millions of dollars into projects, whether they be tax credit or the hotel project that Gwinnett Housing Corporation is just closed. And so, you know, we're trying to focus our organizations on the idea that, yes, we're here, we are a solution, we will have, you know, funding consistently that we want to be able to available, but it's about leverage. You know, our $21 million investment is at an average investment of $21,000 a unit for what we're going to get out of it. We want to focus on that because money is finite. We may have more this year or maybe a little less next year. That's just what it is. But if we could find leverage from the private sector or the lending institutions, you know, whether it's the state or the federal government as well, that's where we're going to find the biggest bang for a buck and the best return on those investments. And at the end of the day, if organizations can also be focused on that as well, leveraging what we have with ARC and House ATL, you know, we're going to take big steps forward in the next few years.
Gray, you're not.
Yeah,
you're
outside my pay grade
volunteer.
there.
Is this a conversation you're having knowing Cobb?
No, but I will tell you this. Back to the local opportunity there. I mean, back in the days of credit unions and community banks, that used to be part of their purpose, right? To invest in the local community very specifically and very, knowledgeably because they're in that community, right? And I think that is another opportunity that we can have at a hyper-local level kind of because there are still those community banks and credit unions out there.
Okay. I'm going to get a couple more questions in, maybe in the back. Just give us your name and who you represent.
Hi, I'm Kamaria Beeman. I work, I'm the social worker at Oak Street Health, the East Point location. We focus primarily on patients who are on Medicare. So our population is overwhelmingly senior citizens. So my question is, and quick context, a lot of the affordable housing that I'm noticing being built has income limits that are way too high for most people who are disabled or on Social Security. And so I wanted to know, is there a departure from Section 8 and housing vouchers? And if so, why?
Tiffany?
I think the short answer is yes, and that is because there is a limited number of funding for vouchers that the federal government issues through housing authorities. So once the housing authority has maxed out their annual allocation, that's why you always see housing authorities have all of these wait lists because there isn't any new additional funding. Once somebody is on voucher assistance, as long as they hold that voucher, they will utilize the same funds on an annual basis. So the need to supplement or to replace voucher or rental assistance is huge, and we try to really help combat that on the front end by lowering the overall cost so that when the apartments are operational, they'll have a lower debt service, which means that they can afford to keep the rents lower without needing to have that voucher assistance.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge of the vouchers isn't necessarily a departure from them, but that we have a departure in terms of the landlord side of it. That we have vouchers that are available across the state that just are not currently being utilized because we can't find units to put individuals in with those vouchers, and that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. You know, what you're touching on though is a very unique problem, and it's a great question because it's a specialized population in this regard. But there's a number of those populations throughout the state that need a specialized housing solution beyond just a permanent supportive housing or just an affordable unit because the income limits are too high. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, you know, whether you're governmental or you're non-governmental, to be the idea that affordable housing doesn't have one shape or size or income level or price. It has to be designed specifically for the groups that we're trying to target, and that means maybe a customized housing solution of a different type of housing, maybe a lower income point with a higher level of subsidy, or just a more supportive style of housing in general to be able to support those that are going to be the ones placed in those locations. And I think that has to be part of the conversation beyond just the dollars and cents. The planning and intent that goes into it has to be a critical part because affordable housing can be painted with a very broad brush, but it doesn't actually solve the problem for all those that may need it.
Thank you, Matt. We hear from Housing Justice League, one of our great advocates.
Good morning. I'm Allison with Housing Justice League. I think my question is, because you were talking about how do you get communications through, crossways with everyone. I'm wondering, are you all having those conversations with the local community development corporations, if you have some, or are they still existing? I know for us in our communities, they have been the stronghold and the wherewithal who have been able to demonstrate how to acquire, construct, and keep a housing affordable. So I'm wondering, are you all talking to those community development corporations, and if not, are you going to?
Gray, do you have those folks in the room?
Yeah, we have them in the room often, and but we don't have a great capacity of them locally in Cobb. So, and back to your point, I think they're a great capacity, but they need to be built, and you got to have them. And but they are in the room, and they are interested, and I think there is some uncertainty with them about what this is all going to mean for them too. So, interesting time for them too.
Yeah. We have not had them in the room as much. We don't have as many in Gwinnett as we do inside the perimeter, but we have a new one out in Gwinnett along Jimmy Carter Boulevard, 85 CDC, that we're really excited about. They're part of the conversation and think of a lot of potential there. It's just another example of how we have to think outside the box when we traditionally think of how we develop affordable housing, how we maintain it, and how we can bring solutions to the table across multiple sectors. And so I think it's a great point.
Yes, we are having those conversations, and also, as Gray mentioned, trying to attract more to DeKalb County so that we can learn from their lessons, but then also incorporate that into our overall strategy.
Allison, I think you make a good point. We work from our assets, and this has been an asset over the years. We need to keep it strong. Another one from online, Frank Whitfield from East Point. East Point's represented very well today. How are we leveraging the resources that are available to ensure Atlanta's surrounding communities benefit? This is a leverage question. Sam may have some answers, DCA, but how are we helping each other? How are we leveraging the resources we have?
So when we get our Housing Opportunity Bond Program and Affordable Housing Trust Fund off the ground in DeKalb County, because we have cities that aren't your typical DeKalb County cities, so we do have City of Atlanta jurisdiction within DeKalb County. It's a small percentage of City of Atlanta, but the overlap is there. Designing our programs to make sure that they complement each other, whether it is our Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund program, where both Invest Atlanta and Decide DeKalb invested brownfield funds to Pullman Yards, which is a historic property that was converted to commercial space for events, restaurants. It really is an amazing property if you haven't been there. But creating programs and making sure that we can be collaborative and we're not too restrictive is our goal.
I think another area that we have seen a lot of growth in is, Tiffany mentioned earlier, there's some developers who are shying away from the light tech development, but I do want to give a shout out to DCA. They put a lot of work into redeveloping their QAP, specifically for the 9% competition, and if you hadn't had a chance to read it, I heavily recommend that you do read it, because there's a lot of great stuff in there and how communities can get bonus points and really become advantageous to what they're doing, and they've put a lot of effort into that, reaching out to not just local governments, but also the development community, and getting their feedback, what they can do, and I do think that's a great opportunity for us to leverage things across the metro Atlanta area, but also across the state. state, and it's a unique challenge to try and blend what may be the need in Jeff Davis County with what the need is in Atlanta or Fulton or Gwinnett. But they have to do that, and they've really done a great job of really expanding the QAP and allowing for a lot more versatility and a lot more opportunity for governments to really be involved in that process through not just local support, but also by designing solutions like being Plan First certified to try and get bonus points as part of the application process.
I know we got 2 seconds. I'll give a brief recent example, sort of. So Marietta just voted down an accessory dwelling unit ordinance with the Marietta. Not 2 weeks later, I think Kennesaw introduced another one. And so, I mean, I think back to this YIMBY and cooperating and leveraging. I mean, I think we're learning from each other. I think we can advocate for each other too as citizens and as other interested parties, right? We can go help Kennesaw get their ADU thing done, and maybe we can get it for us sometime later.
You know, it's the beauty of local government, isn't it? And the leaders in local government, our political leaders, our volunteer leaders, the conversation. I don't know that we have any banks in the room, but we're going to get them here in the room. They need to hear this conversation. They're going to have to stretch a little bit. We're going to need their investment dollars. I'm going to try to get one more question in. Go, Eric. This is a question.
Eric Speakman. I applaud you all for being positive during uncertainty. I've had a lot of conversations with foundation leaders and community leaders right after the executive order related to the nonprofit fiscal cliff that he's exacerbating right now. So I'm hearing common themes of everyone saying innovation, better collaboration, focus on what you do best kind of stuff. And what I'm hearing recently a lot was nimble. We need to be faster and quicker than we have for the last 30 years. So top advice. What's your top number one advice to all of us listening of the top, what should we do now? We have to be fast, nimble, quick, collaborate, innovate, all this stuff. What do you want to see us do right now? Thank you very much.
Very easy question, Matt. What do you do?
Yeah, Eric's trying to get me in trouble. I think it's simply about flipping our mindset from being reactive to proactive. We don't need to wait for somebody else to do something for us to take action. We can take action ourselves. We know what our challenges are. We know what our needs are on the ground. So let's be proactive in doing that and not let others dictate to us locally what can or can't happen, but rather take advantage of opportunities we have in front of us and just begin to take action and do rather than wait.
Quick example. So back to the Yes in My Backyard thing, there's actually a very tangible example of that happening right now in Marietta called Emmanuel's Village by an organization called Glory House, which is a mission-based organization. They had homeless encampments in the neighborhood of their facility. So they decided to use their vacant land to make transitional housing for 15 units of transitional housing for those people. And so this was not local government. This was an individual and an organization that was mission-based going out and saying, I got land and I see these people, let me help them. And so that allowed the faith-based communities to come in and allowed local governments to say yes to things that was a hard thing to say yes to otherwise. So we just need to do more of that. I mean, I think everybody's got to do something, for sure.
Thanks, Greg.
For Decide to Cab, I would say any external parties, whether you are a city, whether you're a private developer or property owner, if you have an idea or have seen another model or mechanism or financing tool in another jurisdiction that you don't know if we have it or if we have the capability to do it or the ability to do it legally, please bring that to us so that we can see if it's something that's feasible, if it's something that we can implement, if it's something that we can add to our toolkit to help development and housing in our jurisdiction. We are always open to new ideas and finding out what works in other places that we may not have thought of or didn't know was an option. So if you have questions, ask. If you have ideas, we're open, and come to us. We have funds. We want to disperse them, and we will work with all of our applicants.
All right, you heard the invitation. Bring your ideas. Huh? You may have to stay a while after the meeting, Tiffany. Again, in very uncertain times, and they're very uncertain. We know money's going to be cut. It's going to get harder in some ways. But the best thing that can come out of that is we are empowered ourselves in each city, in each county, as those heading up organizations, we are empowered to figure out new ideas, better collaboration, using the toolbox that ARC has, working with DCA, working with the House ATL. There's a lot of us out there working, and I think working together, we can make a difference. Please thank Gray, Matt, Tiffany, Patty, Brittany for being here today. Thank you. This was very, very good. Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks. Thanks, man. All right. We're in our last session, and a lot of things happen, not locally, but at the Capitol. Okay, if I could have everybody's attention, we're going to get out on time. You know, Crossover Day just happened at the Capitol. We know our great advocate there, and someone that we have back here often is attorney and public policy advocate Elizabeth Apley. Elizabeth, we can't thank you enough for all the hours and advocacy that you do there. Where are you, Elizabeth? Ah, you're behind me. Okay, thank you. Please give us an update.
Good morning. This is so inspiring and affirming and empowering. I appreciate all the work that you do. I'm going to be talking about a lot of details today. It's a tough environment at the Capitol this year. You're the experts. You need to be at the Capitol. You need to be raising your voices, educating these legislators. A legislator was quoted today in the newspaper as saying, "No bill is ever truly dead if you have the right combination of public opinion and political will." And of course, those two things are very closely correlated. So this is the first of a two-year session. Bills that don't pass this year are available to pass in 2026. Last Thursday, March 6th, was Crossover Day. That's the day by which legislation needs to pass from one house to the other in order to be available in that form. But they also call this the beginning of the dangerous days, because the struggle is on, if you will, to amend legislation onto other things in a way that is very far from transparent. You may have read in the Atlanta paper today about an election bill. This is now 5 days later, or a week later, and they're first writing about it in the newspaper that something passed in the last minutes on sine die, massive changes on elections. So there have been over 100 bills on housing, homelessness, and tenants' rights, but the bills that actually came out of committee, and that 110 includes both good and bad, the vast majority are good, affirmative measures. Only a handful came out of committee altogether, and even fewer crossed over. And so we spent a lot of time fighting bad things, so we're going to be continuing to work. I'm putting as positive a spin on things as I can for your benefit. I hate for y'all to go away on a negative note. Maybe Bill will end with a prayer. So sine die is April 4th. That's the light at the end of the tunnel. So preventing and ameliorating homelessness. After the grants passed decision by the United States Supreme Court, we anticipated a continuing struggle to stop the legislature from criminalizing homelessness. As you know, we have been fighting with the Cicero Foundation. This is this Texas billionaires group that is advocating across the country to use criminal laws as a way to force people who are sleeping on the street or in encampments into sanctioned encampments, which have been described to us as parking lots with a fence around it, a porta potty, and potable water. So that's no answer to homelessness, that's hiding homelessness. So House Bill 295 proposed to create a new private cause of action by any individual or property individual or corporation that either owned or leased property that was inconvenienced by what they claimed was a policy or pattern of a city or county to fail to enforce criminal laws against unsheltered homelessness. And they're listed in the bill: sleeping on the street, obstructing a sidewalk, loitering, pandering. And so it's an insistence that these cities and counties, they waive sovereign immunity. They can people who rent property can collect up to 2 years of property taxes they never paid. They're entitled to attorney's fees. It's an onerous bill. It came out of committee. We fought it along with ACCG and GMA, and we did get it held in rules, but it'll be back in some form. There is some good news on homelessness. SB 170 passed the Senate and is now in the House. It proposes to create an interagency council on homelessness. This is an interagency council of all the state agencies: community affairs, behavioral health and developmental disabilities, corrections, DFACS, veterans affairs. There is no committee that you go to that doesn't talk about housing. But what the legislature is willing to do about housing is very slight. So this would be, it was actually recommended by the state auditor, who was directed by legislation a couple years back to do an audit of all the funding, federal, state, and local, being spent on homelessness. And he said, you know, it's overwhelmingly federal money in Georgia. The state's not investing anything to speak of. It's being spent in conformity with federal requirements, but there is no overarching strategy in Georgia to prevent and ameliorate homelessness. 32 other states have used this strategy, and so this came out of that. SB 233 continues the Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission. We got some language added to their obligation in House Bill 1013 a couple years back to say, let's look at the intersection of homelessness and mental health. And so finally that was created, and our Jack Harden led that work group. As you're not surprised to hear, they came up with excellent recommendations that we want to see implemented, and SB 233 would extend the life of the commission beyond its current end date of June of 2025. HR 207 is a House Study Committee proposal that can be adopted up to the very end of the session that would look at the eradication of homelessness. Matthew was talking about foster care. I was delighted to hear it. This is an issue we've been looking at. Housing inadequacy is the third largest reason why children are being removed from their homes and placed into foster care in Georgia every year. And it's one of the biggest barriers to family reunification. At the same time, we have available to us federal housing vouchers specifically focused on keeping families together, avoiding children being placed into foster care, supporting reunification, federal vouchers available to help those youth transitioning out of foster care as they age out. We know that foster care is referred to as the highway to homelessness, with 24 to 50% of these youth ending up homeless by the time they're 26. And so we know that DCA and DFACS have, just within the last few months, entered into an MOU to strengthen the process for connecting those agencies to make sure that Georgia starts to utilize these available federal vouchers for these foster situations. In addition, SR 310 is Senator Kay Kirkpatrick's bill to create, resolution, to create a Senate study committee on support and resources for transition age foster youth. It's broader than the issue of housing, but of course housing will be a part of that conversation if that resolution creates a study committee. So our big ask on homelessness is to urge the legislature to provide the additional $20 million needed to fund the Georgia Housing Voucher Program. That is a program operated by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities in response to its obligation under the Olmstead Settlement Agreement. That settlement agreement was entered into in 2010. This remains one of two areas that remain unfulfilled. The state obligated itself to provide housing vouchers, supportive housing vouchers and wraparound services to a target population of 9,000 people described as chronically homeless individuals with severe and persistent mental illness cycling through the criminal justice system, the hospitals, and the emergency rooms. At present, the department is serving 2,159 people. And when the legislature refused to add the funding that was needed because there'd been vastly increased demand for these vouchers, and at the same time, basically a doubling of the cost of rent, the essential part of the cost of this program had doubled since the pandemic. They'd been deficit funded for 2 years. The legislature in 2024 refused to add any additional funding. And so as of April 1, the DBHDD would qualify people as eligible for the GHVP under the settlement agreement and then refer them to DCA to receive a federal housing choice voucher. So that there is a place for that sustainability model, but the commissioner of DBHDD has said it takes time. They need to be in GHVP funded housing for at least a year. They need this funding. And what has happened since April 1, instead of housing hundreds of new people, they've housed 21. So the program is at a standstill. We need this money, and we need your voices. Standing up for tenants' rights continues to be a priority. House Bill 689 was a strategy that we developed to continue what the Department of Community Affairs is doing with the final COVID emergency rental assistance dollars. You know, it took the department a long time to ramp up to distribute that $1 billion plus in COVID emergency rental assistance dollars. And the reason it took so long to ramp up is because there is no state funding to DCA. There was no emergency rental assistance program in Georgia, and so they were creating something from scratch. They took the final $55 million of that COVID money and created what they called the Georgia Rental Assistance Eviction Prevention Initiative. Sorry for stumbling over that. It's a long name. And contracted with Legal Aid Society and with Georgia Legal Services Program to provide legal representation for income-qualified people facing eviction, to provide navigators who would pre-qualify people to receive emergency rental assistance, short-term emergency rental assistance, and then provided up to $2 million a month in that assistance. Clearly, that's a fraction of what's needed, but that's the pilot program. It's working, and what we have is an end date to those federal dollars of September of 2025. So if we don't get this money in the budget, in the FY26 budget, they already declined to put it in the FY25 budget, that program will end. The 21 people staffing it within DCA will be let go, and there will be no state program to fill this huge need. I don't think I have to make the case to you about why emergency rental assistance is effective, essential, upstream, preventive, stable housing, stable family. This is a slide from DCA. I didn't write it. I can give you the rest of the slides that they provided on this. But this is what I'm sharing with legislators about what the department claims is the implications of ending this program, and that means by failing to put in state funding. Housing instability and homelessness, consequences that are adverse to landlords as well as the broader economy, a strain on public services and the legal system with increased evictions, public health and social disruptions, and rental market volatility. I was at the Capitol this morning at 7:30 to testify to the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Economic Development. They listened very patiently. But it's going to take all of you raising your voices in order to make this happen. So, as you know, Georgia, and particularly Atlanta, have been a target of these large, out-of-state real estate investment trusts, hedge funds, financializing housing, buying massive amounts of housing and converting it to single-family usage. This elbows out first-time home buyers, and as landlords, the research shows that they are more likely to raise the rent, more likely to evict, more likely to engage in serial evictions, and less likely to provide the kind of repair, maintenance, and security that we see from other landlords. Those shell corporations and the strategies that they utilize to hide their ownership structures make it very impossible for a tenant, for cities, for code enforcement to hold them accountable. So there have been a number of efforts, and by the way, can read online, I just read it again today, that they target Georgia because we have such lax, or non-existent, I should say, tenant protections. So House Bill 55 proposed to cap the number of single-family homes that a single entity could own in Georgia. It provided for a private cause of action to enforce a 4-year period for them to get rid of any holdings that exceeded that 2,000 cap. This is talking about single-family units. It was amended in committee, and it stalled without a House floor vote, and the author tells me he'll try again in 2026. Georgia law, as you know, prohibits local jurisdiction from adopting rental registries. Well, a rental registry is kind of the baseline if you're going to provide any kind of transparency and accountability for the habitability law we passed last year for renters, or any kind of meaningful enforcement of landlord obligations. And so we were hoping to see a straight repeal of that ban and leave it to local jurisdictions to craft a registry that met local needs. Instead, GMA and ACCG came up with a much narrower approach. They proposed in House Bill 374 to narrowly circumscribe what would be permitted for local governments to do in creating a registry. They couldn't charge a fee. It wouldn't be a public-facing website. It would only be ownership, limited information. Even so, it was okay, not great, but okay. It was so narrowed in committee that it became completely useless, even to GMA, and so they're going to revive a new effort in 2026. That bill did not cross over. House Bill 399 is Representative Mary Margaret Oliver's bill. It did pass out of the House and is available now in the Senate. We expect to see it heard next Wednesday in the Economic Development Committee. It requires a licensed broker and an in-state person to be available to receive and manage communications from tenants about maintenance and other issues on the property for any entity that owns more than 25 properties. So it doesn't apply to multifamily. It's very limited, but this is the tool we have to work with. Extended stay motels were mentioned. I was delighted to hear what you all are doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We know that there are more than 30,000 people in Metro Atlanta alone. I know that's an old number, more than 120 school buses every day going to pick these children up. Families are forced into these really expensive and not very well, not decent housing as last resort, short of homelessness because of a bad credit history or because of a past eviction or because of the inability to pull together that large amount of money that it's necessary for security deposits and the rest in order to acquire housing. So in 2023, the Georgia Supreme Court, in a great case brought by the Atlanta Legal Aid Society, recognized that duration of stay and other relevant facts can convert someone staying in a hotel into having the rights of a tenant and therefore the right to a legal eviction process. Not that Georgia's eviction laws are so great, but the alternative is the lockout authority that innkeepers have now for transient guests. So House Bill 183 proposed to reverse the protections provided by the Neeson decision, turn everyone, no matter how long they stay, into a guest subject to lockout. Then they sought to leverage law enforcement into it because law enforcement has been, in some jurisdictions, has been resisting and not willing to come and throw people out who've been living there for 6 months or 6 years. And so the bill was so bad, it provided so little notice, no due process, that it was even worse than the not very good squatters law that they passed last year that provided more in the way of notice and due process to people who had entered the property illegally from the outset. So it didn't pass out of committee. We fought it very hard, but we know that part of the House majority leadership is interested in meeting the desires of the innkeepers on this bill, and it remains a threat. House Bill 492 was a bill brought by Clayton County. A significant part of their revenue comes from these excise taxes on hotel motel stays. Current law provides that if you've been staying there over 90 days, that tax goes away. What this bill proposed was to eliminate that in order to hold Delta accountable for these millions of dollars in excise taxes, because Delta would rent a hotel for a year at a time, thereby avoiding the excise tax, and it's such a huge impact on Clayton County, it's like 40% of their budget. So they brought this bill. We managed to get the author to fix it to allow for the cessation of that tax after 90 days when it's being paid by an individual or nonprofit. The bill came out of subcommittee, but not out of full committee. But you may have seen, as I did, a front page story in the AJC this weekend talking about this bill that was, officially dead. So we'll have to keep watch. All right, I'm going to come back to following the money. As you know, we have a $16.5 billion surplus. $11.5 billion of that is unobligated and available to be spent. There is a little bit of good news on the funding front. The Senate Democratic Caucus did adopt our long-held position that the state should be investing $1 billion of that surplus into the Housing Trust Fund for the homeless, because it has the authority to invest in rental property and home ownership for low income and to hold those funds without lapsing. Our fears of a renewed effort that we saw in 2024 to reduce the state low-income housing tax credit, the only source of state funds for the creation and preservation of affordable housing, have thus far failed to materialize, but anything that involves that amount of money you can't call dead. We're vigilant. House Bill 165 had proposed a sales tax exemption on construction materials for nonprofits building or preserving affordable housing. We supported that bill. We had a good hearing on it. That bill then it did not pass out, but it was then hijacked and converted into a personal tax deduction for damage suffered under Hurricane Helene, but the author has committed to bring that vision back again next year. House Bill 357 proposed a $10 million annual tax credit for Habitat for Humanity. It came out of committee. It did not receive a floor vote, but it does remain available for passage next year. And by the way, if y'all did not see or experience or see pictures of the Habitat's home build in Liberty Plaza across the street from the Capitol last week. It was just a beautiful experience, and one that we hope they'll continue. House Bill 159 is DCA's bill to raise the bond limit that funds the Georgia Dream program. Very important for mortgage and down payment assistance for low and moderate income home buyers. It passed the House by substitute. It passed out of the Senate committee yesterday morning, increasing the bond limit from $3 billion to $6 billion. I would add that they asked for it to be raised to $12 billion, so they're not thrilled that it was cut, but this gets them what they need to keep going. So this is the nasty report card of where we are. The governor has proposed his budget. The House passed it out yesterday. It's now in the breast of the Senate. The Georgia Housing Voucher Program, our ask, is for $20 million. The governor put in zero add. The House added $1.7 million. Did I keep saying billion? That's aspirational thinking. 1.7 million, and we're waiting to see what the Senate does. We need your voices on that. Mercy Care got $300,000 for homeless outreach. Partners for Home received $750,000 for community action teams. We got no surplus to the Housing Trust Fund. The Majority Leader's Stable Housing Accountability Program, transition housing for homeless people conditioned on work requirements, on sobriety testing and drug testing, and anti-housing. He will tell you it's an anti-housing first model, was funded at $1 million last year when the legislation passed. The House proposed to triple that to $3 million. The Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless did get an increase last year from what had been a $3 million appropriation for the last 30 years to $7.83 million. We were delighted to see that included in continuation. And the House added $4 million to the Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless with this language: one-time funds to the State Housing Trust Fund to improve homeless programs and leverage additional federal grants. So we are calling this potentially usable for purposes of emergency rental assistance. That's our frame, and we're using it as a stepping stone to raise that to the $25 million for emergency rental assistance. So your job, should you choose to accept it, respond to alerts that you're getting from House ATL and partners and whoever else you subscribe to. And, I apologize. I should have said at the outset that I represent at the Capitol House ATL, Enterprise Community Partners, Presbyterians for Better Georgia, 9 to 5 Georgia, and the Corporation for Supportive Housing on these issues of housing and homelessness. And I'm very grateful to them for the opportunity to do this work. Please connect with your members. Urge the Senate Appropriations Committee to fund the GHVP and the emergency rental assistance. Urge your senator to vote yes on the Senate Study Committee for additional resources for foster youth, and urge your House member to vote yes on SB 170 and whatever else your heart desires. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Elizabeth listed the organizations that pay her small stipend to do the work she does, but she's representing all of us. And I want to remind folks that anything you saw on the screen, particularly Elizabeth's material, can be found at atlantaregionalhousingforum.org. So I know all you guys taking pictures, taking notes, but you can find all that information there. You can also find the information that we talked about with ARC at their website about their toolkit. Elizabeth, we can't thank you enough. With the surplus that we're running in this state, this is embarrassing. I want to ask, when you say you need to hear our voice,
Yeah.
be more specific. Do they need to show up? Do they need to write a letter? And particularly in the outlying counties, because it's hard coming right out of Atlanta. What does it mean?
So phone calls, emails, coming to the Capitol, the session will end and the process will begin again. This is a ripe opportunity to engage. You have databases and lists that you communicate with, share the information with those people and urge them to engage. I think that if you would come to the Capitol, if you just give me a text or an email and let me know that you're coming, I will put you to work, connect you with the people who you can influence. Obviously, our biggest impact is with the legislators who represent us individually, but your expertise is so vast that I would urge you to consider spending a little time trying to make a difference, building a relationship with these people. It's hard for them. I mean, the chairman, who has no interest in homeless people or keeping people in their home, he's put a little on the spot when I spend 10 minutes sharing the data on homelessness, on housing instability, on the consequences and the department's support. They have to hear from all of us, though. And by the way, I put together a list of 30 groups that are supporting both House Bill 689 and this funding ask for the emergency rental assistance. If you don't have your group's name on it, shame on you. But we're willing to add your names. So, these are the voices of healthcare advocates, of housers, of all of the groups that are concerned about people remaining safely and stably housed.
Please thank Elizabeth Ashby.
I'd much rather stay here than go back to the Capitol.
Elizabeth said she'd rather stay in this room than go back to the Capitol, but that's where she's headed. Now, I have some final thoughts. It's not exactly a prayer, but you can take it as a prayer, and I think prayer helps. You've heard about a lot of action in the region. Action that we haven't really heard about in the past. In DeKalb County, City of Decatur, Gwinnett County, Austell, Peachtree Corners, Clarkston, South Fulton, Brookhaven, Canton, Atlanta. It's really happening now, folks. Part of it is the conversation that we have. Part of it is all the organizations that are out there between meetings every day working on this. So we want to encourage you to stay engaged with ARC and the resources that they have. You've also heard about Community Housing Forum in Marietta. I think that's a model that we can have housing forums throughout the region because we need those local conversations, not just regional conversations, to figure out what's possible at the local level. We need to give our policy makers cover, meaning support, to do the right thing. And oftentimes, it's the courageous thing. But they're the ones who can follow the data. They know what's coming to our region, and they know what is possible in their city or in their county. Now, there's lots of conversations going on, again, throughout the region. House ATL is doing a tremendous job. They have different committees. I encourage you to get involved there. Georgia ACT, ULI Atlanta, the Atlanta Justice League, many. I won't go through all the organizations, but we're all starting to pull in the same direction. There was recently a panel discussion at Downtown Rotary. Now, this is important when it happens at Downtown Rotary of who's in the room. And there we heard from Courtney English, advisor to the mayor, Sarah Kirsch with the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, who really did a great job talking about capital stacks and how investors could invest their money. We heard from John Almond, who's doing a great job in the West Side Future Fund, and it was moderated by Terry Lee of the Atlanta Housing. I really encourage you to go back. You can go to YouTube, you can see it on the screen, and listen to that It's about 30 minutes, well worth your time. Finally, let's make no mistake. With all the progress and all the focus on affordable housing, we're still losing thousands of units every year around the region. Now, we feel like we're making progress, but we're losing ground. And we need to be very honest about that. The private market easily handles the 60% who can pay those $2,000 to $3,000 rentals. But 40% of our citizens struggle with their housing needs, 40%. That's incredible. Because when you pay so much for rent, you don't have money for other things. So this is our big challenge in our region. As I often point out, and we often talk about here, that making progress on housing, affordable housing, affects other things. It affects educational and health outcomes. It affects the environment because people don't live near where they work. It puts more cars on the road. It often affects civility and crime as people get more desperate for places to live. So everything is connected to everything else. The things I just listed around education, the environment, health, are things that everybody wants to do better on. We've just got to make a better connection between how housing affects those outcomes. And eventually, we'll have to address the way forward around zoning. NIMBY can open up better building materials, permitting, changing the narrative around mixed income housing. Lots to do, but our voice is being heard, and I think some of our leaders are being courageous and leading the way. Special thanks today. We had a big agenda today. Special thanks for our panelists who were here, for the mayor who showed up on time and told us the great things that are happening in Atlanta, for Anna Roach, and that ARC really has developed a toolkit and a committee that's working with all 11 counties. I want to thank the steering committee that helps us build this agenda. I want to particularly thank Kristen Allen and the entire ARC team who helped put this together today. And our advisory council, which I think, is that going to go up on the screen, George? And our presenting organizations, ANDP, Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, and ARC. As the mayor said, this is really a group effort. And I want to always thank our great producer, George Bergen. George, come out and take your bow. The good folks at St. Luke's who make their facilities available and particularly making the parking free for us. We really are a team. I think we're making progress, we're collaborating more, and even with the dangers and uncertainties that we have before us, leaders know that change is always happening. But instead of going into ain't it awful and my God, we're going to lose all that funding, what we're going to is being creative, being collaborative, making our voice heard. And as Elizabeth said, keeping each other in our prayers. Thank you all for being here. We will see you at our next housing forum, and thanks for all you do for this region.